All right, all of the judges ready? And the timer? Both teams. All right, then we'll begin. In this speech, I'm going to show you how the analysis of the affirmative team is simply incorrect. And in the end, it's best to vote for the negative team and stick with the current system. Let's start off with their harm number one of unsustainable debt. Now, they talked a lot about China and how China is currently holding a lot of our debt. My first response is there's nothing stopping China from borrowing more. Nothing stopping China from borrowing more. If they want to be the person who the government lends to, if they want to borrow money, if the government wants to borrow money from China, then they will continue to do so regardless of whether or not deficit reduction occurs. My second response is that current debt remains. Current debt remains, which in turn means that the impact also remains, because they're saying China currently has power because of the debt they currently have to devalue the dollar and to cause all these impacts. Well, the current debt China holds will remain under the affirmative team's plan. There's no debt reduction under the affirmative team's plan because the government will still be running a huge deficit each year. They only generate about $150 billion a year. There's a $1.3 trillion deficit per year. The government will still be increasing their debt. There's only deficit reduction under the plan, so there's nothing stopping them from borrowing more money from China. So that's my response to subpoint B, is that political power remains regardless. Now, this is also regardless of whether or not China chooses to borrow any more money from the United States federal government. This is for one important reason, just to cite one important reason, is because China is a huge trade partner with the United States. They can also use that as leverage for political power over the United States. And my final response is that they haven't used their power yet. The affirmative team can't guarantee that the impact of this harm is actually going to come about, because as of now, China hasn't used their power against us, and they've said this. Moving into their harm number two of high-frequency trading, my first response is of liquidity. Now, in the cross-examination, Rachel said that high-frequency traders do indeed provide liquidity, and she defined liquidity as the ease of trading, basically how easily you can trade your stocks or bonds or equities in the market. Now, that's obviously a good thing, because if someone wants a bank loan, say an entrepreneur, they have to have liquidity in the banks in order for them to get that. If there's no available cash, if there's no liquidity in those banks, these entrepreneurs can't get a loan, they can't start a business. So liquidity is important in that way. And by reducing high-frequency trading, they will be reducing liquidity, which I think both teams can agree is a good thing. Now, my second response is of prices. Prices. High-frequency traders benefit the overall market by providing price discovery and reducing price impacts. This is from Terence Hendershot, a PhD in information technology and associate professor of finance, and Ryan Riordan, a PhD in economics, February 2012. Quote, HFT have a beneficial role in the price discovery process in terms of information being impounded into prices and smaller pricing errors. More informative stocks can lead to better resource allocation in the economy. Reducing pricing errors improves the efficiency of prices. One important positive role of smaller pricing errors would be lower implicit transaction costs by long-term investors, end quote. Now, that's a really long and confusing piece of evidence, but it basically shows us three things. Firstly, high-frequency traders make information available to other investors. Information is available to other investors. Secondly, they reduce pricing errors of already available information. And thirdly, they lower transactions costs for other investors. So these are three ways in which high-frequency traders specifically help the overall market and other investors. And my final response is of stability. Stability. High-frequency traders reduce what's called volatility, which is price swings. By doing so, they increase stability. This is from Dieter Sornet, a PhD and former professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, August 2011. Quote, higher liquidity and higher trading volumes are generally associated with lower transaction costs, narrowing bid-ask spreads, thereby reducing volatility. Several studies have shown that HFT, or algorithmic trading, have improved market efficiency in this way. So high-frequency traders increase the stability of markets, and they help the overall markets in that way. Now, moving on to their advantage of deficit reduction, I have one point, and that's a solvency point, or I'm going to have several points under this solvency of revenue. Revenue. Now, my first point is that it's a short-term focus. Short-term focus. And this, in the end, will be self-defeating. This is from Josh Irons, a PhD in economics, August 2009. Quote, key to achieving deficit reduction is a robust economic recovery. A near-term focus on deficit reduction through higher taxes or reduced spending would choke off economic recovery, and in the end would be self-defeating, end quote. So we see that because the affirmative team's plan is focusing on near-term deficit reduction, they're focusing on deficit reduction, in the end, they'll be self-defeating because they're simply raising taxes. That has never helped the problem. And that's my second response, that tax hikes only make it worse. Tax hikes only make it worse. This is from Mark Weisbrot, a PhD in economics. They say that in August 2011, they say that, quote, the United States is not facing any debt crisis at all, with interest payments on the debt at just 1.4% of GDP. There is no legitimate economic reason for a debt burden, even an unsustainable one, to result in years of economic stagnation and unemployment. And my partner will be addressing the disadvantages that show you exactly how that comes about. And therefore, this affirmative team's plan will not be justified because it will just result in economic damage. And as we saw before, that is just self-defeating. And my third and final response is of migration. Migration. Now, Rachel admitted in cross-examination that if traders didn't want to pay the tax, they could just move overseas so that they didn't have to pay the tax. They could trade somewhere else. And that's exactly what they will do and have done empirically. This is from Professor of Finance Christopher Cope, a PhD in finance, July 28, 2010. Quote, an FTT imposed in one jurisdiction and not simultaneously imposed in the same form in all major financial sectors will engender significant cross-border tax arbitrage or evasion. Empirical evidence from China, Finland, Japan, Sweden, and Taiwan and other countries confirm that trading migrates quickly to lower tax jurisdictions following the introduction of the FTT. Now, if you look at this is simply logical. They said that they would reduce all of high-frequency traders' profits. They said that they would completely eliminate high-frequency trading under their plan. Well, high-frequency traders don't want to just lose their jobs. They don't want to do that. So they can move to lower tax jurisdictions. And as the empirics show, from 5 different countries, this is the case as what's happened historically. Now, responding to their advantage number 2, I have one solvency point, and that's of trading unmonitored. Trading unmonitored. This is from the Huffington Post, an internet business newspaper, August 16, 2011. They're citing the former SEC chairman. Quote, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, does not currently have the ability to monitor the majority of stock trading in the United States. It is inconceivable that they can regulate high-frequency trading, said Ralph Farah, a former SEC general counsel, end quote. This means 2 things for the affirmative plan. Firstly, they cannot guarantee full revenue, since traders can simply go unmonitored and not pay the tax. Secondly, the affirmative team cannot reduce the majority of high-frequency trading, meaning they don't gain solvency for their harm number 2. So for all these reasons, because the affirmative team's plan is insolvent and it will only make the problem they presented worse, I would strongly urge you to vote for the negative team. Thank you. Now I'm open for cross-examination.
So are all 3 of the judges ready? Timer? Let's begin. Hello, Justin. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Just a couple of questions. First of all, will the government continue borrowing if they don't need to?
As you saw, they will, because they'll still be running a deficit. You said the deficit is about $1 trillion, so they'll still be borrowing.
Now, are threats to economic security bad? Should we try to solve threats to our economic security?
Sure, they are, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, how much are costs lowered by high-frequency trading?
How much are costs lowered?
Yes.
Well, I didn't read specifically in the piece of evidence, but it did say somewhere in there a percentage of sorts, I think.
Okay, so could I see that piece of evidence?
Sure.
Could you show me where it quantified?
I believe it was right. No, sorry, that wasn't actually a piece of evidence I read. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we had no quantification for that?
There wasn't specific quantification or numbers in that piece of evidence.
Okay, thank you. Now, is volatility good for our markets?
No, volatility is definitely bad.
Okay, would you say that something reduces volatility is a good thing?
Yes, high-frequency trading does that.
Oh, okay, we'll talk about that. Now, the May flash crash. I believe in 2010 we had a flash crash.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, so now was that caused by volatility?
Yes, it was a rapid price swings, but that was largely because of the Eurozone. The euro had gone down quite a bit that day, so international trading was just unstable and people were not confident in the markets.
Okay, now would you agree that the economy is long-term? Like, to solve the deficit, that helping the economy over a longer period of time is one of the main ways?
You need a long-term focus, and I specifically read evidence saying deficit reduction ideas like tax hikes are short-term focuses.
Okay, so now what specific taxes was this talking about? Was it talking about income tax, corporate tax, estate tax?
It just said taxes.
All right, can I take a look at that piece of evidence?
Sure.
Thank you.
There you go.
Perfect. And then just as a refresher, would you remind us of the highest rate you tax?
Highest rate you tax?
Yeah, what's the highest rate?
I believe it's 0.5%.
Okay, now what is 0.5% of $10,000?
0.5% of $10,000? That's like $5.
Okay, well let's say, is that
50.
Is that a significant amount of $10,000? Would you say?
No, that isn't a significant amount, but high-frequency traders aren't trading large shares. They're making penny profits each time.
Now, are other countries have a financial transactions tax currently, correct?
A few, yes. I brought up 5 examples in my speech.
Could I see that piece of evidence as well?
Sure. There you go.
Thank you. And you brought up a piece of evidence that trading will move overseas, correct?
Yes, that was
now,
the same piece of evidence.
Which type of trading is it mentioning?
It's talking about trading in general. Any trading that becomes unprofitable, obviously they're not just going to lose their jobs.
So you would say it's mostly high-frequency trading?
Yes, it would be mostly high-frequency trading, I think.
Okay, and you brought up a piece of evidence, I believe, about regulating high-frequency trading, correct?
Yep.
Now, was that talking about taxing or just regulating, monitoring?
That was talking about monitoring. They don't even.
Too,
yeah, they can't even track them. They don't know that they exist or where they're trading.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
No further questions.
Thank you.